gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy.
Remarkable.
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking marketing lessons from The Last of Us with the help of our special guest, CMO of VelocityEHS. Ashley, how are you?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me, Ian.
So excited to have you on the show today. Going to talk VelocityEHS. We're going to talk The Last of Us, some marketing takeaways. Why the heck did you pick The Last of Us to talk about today?
Well, when we first talked, I had just finished watching the episode where, spoiler alert, where Joel died, and I just could not get over it. It was in the back of my head, and it was like all I could think about for, I feel like, days. And so very relevant for me. There's a lot when you think about how it ties back into marketing too that I think we could talk about, but really it's just when we talk about things that I love and things that were really relevant for me. The Last of Us was very top of mind and had a big emotional impact.
And I'm so pumped. I loved the video game. I love the show. I can't wait. But before we get into that, tell us about VelocityEHS and your role as CMO.
Sure. So VelocityEHS is a sustainability and a safety software organization. And so our main motto is helping people get back home from work safely. And so we have 4 or 5 core products in the category that are focused on that. And we really like to think of ourselves as disruptive in that space. We're really hyper-focused on a lot of AI innovation, a lot of 3D motion capture work that's exciting, trying to outpace risk and predict risk on a job so that people don't lose their fingers, toes, and all the things when they're in a different environment at work. So really a noble cause, I think. It's different than any organization I've been a part of where we really are helping people's lives be impacted and helping them be more safe at work.
And I'm super excited to dig into the marketing of such a cool, innovative company. Meredith, what the heck is The Last of Us?
If you don't think there's hope for the world, why bother going on?
You haven't seen the world, so you don't know.
So The Last of Us is unique in that it was originally a video game, and I think it's the first TV series that we've covered that's based off a video game. The original video game came out in 2013, and then they adapted it into an HBO series in 2023. So the series was produced in close collaboration with the gaming team, and so it was produced by PlayStation Productions and Sony Pictures Television. Neil Druckmann, one of the co-creators of this series, was the one who came up with a storyline in the very beginning. So that's what the video game was based off of. And then they based the TV show off of it. And he was in college in 2004 at the time. And he had this idea for a police officer protecting a little girl during a zombie apocalypse.
You keep going for family.
I'm not family.
No. You're cargo.
He had been inspired by a PlayStation 2 game called Eco, as well as a character in Sin City named Josh Hardigan, who's this sort of like protector figure who's rough around the edges, and then Night of the Living Dead as well. And the parasitic fungus in the story is based on a real life fungus called cordyceps, is like the parent fungus name. And it actually infects insects and alters their behavior and eventually kills them. So Druckmann had seen a BBC documentary about it. And imagine that the fungus had mutated and was starting to target humans.
If you come this far, then you know what's out there.
You're not going to scare us.
Scared him?
So he ended up partnering with Craig Mazin, who had created the HBO series Chernobyl to make the series. And so they both served as executive producers, writers, and directors for both seasons 1 and 2. And together they worked with the game studio Naughty Dog to align the show with the game.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
I started listening not the first podcast that I listened to, but one of the first screenwriting podcasts I listened to way back in 2013 was Craig Mazin's podcast that he did with this other guy. And that's the first time I learned about screenwriting was
way.
Yeah. And Craig Mazin was I think it was Scary Movie 3 or something like that. He had a very different background before he did Chernobyl, but he was a very curmudgeon-y guy. And he was and the other guy, I forget his name. It was a very sort of I don't know, just a fun, just sort of a lighthearted guy. And so anyways, they did this sort of curmudgeon-y, lighthearted guy. And anyways, when I saw that he made Chernobyl, I was like, oh, this is the perfect thing for him. And then now Last of Us, you're like, oh, of course, yeah. Because he kind of has that dark side. So anyways, sort of my writing journey.
That's so cool. And yeah, it makes sense that his background was in Chernobyl too. It's like the the sort of post-apocalyptic feel to it.
I had to turn it off. I watched, I think, the first 3 episodes of Chernobyl, and I was like, I can't do this.
It was too dark.
I mean, it is absolutely metal.
When they were looking into casting for The Last of Us, this was all done during the pandemic, so they did most of it through Zoom, which I thought was really interesting. And I feel it just picks up different things than actually being in person, obviously. But Druckmann and Mazin really wanted actors who could embody the sort of emotional complexity of the characters. And so they wanted the actors to emotionally align with the characters instead of just going for sort of lookalikes to the video game characters. For Joel, the sort of main protector actor character, they really needed someone who could portray both this sort of hardened survivor and also be deep down this vulnerable, sort of broken person. And they really loved Pedro Pascal's ability to do both. I feel like he's just so multifaceted, so emotionally attuned. And for the role of Ellie, Bella Ramsey was immediately a standout. Druckmann said, I didn't see Bella acting like Ellie. I saw Ellie, which I feel really hits home how he felt about her. The show was filmed in Alberta, Canada, and was one of the largest productions in Canadian TV history. Each episode had a budget of $15 million, and it averaged 32 million viewers per episode in the US. Overall, it generated over $90 million in streaming revenue for the Max platform by the end of 2024. And it brought in an estimated 6 to 7 million new subscribers, which means tens of millions more in revenue for HBO Max. And it became HBO's most watched debut season ever. So super successful. It's won so many awards. It's won 8 Emmys, 2 Screen Actors Guild Awards, and way more. It's been renewed for a 3rd season. But the news came out, we were talking about this earlier, that Druckmann recently left the show. So we'll sort of see how the 3rd season shapes up. But Ian, I'm actually wondering for you, because you've played the video game, how important you think it is to really align with the source material if you have content that you're basing off of something else, and if you feel like this did a good job of it.
Gosh, it's like the $1 million question, right? Or multi-million-dollar question, $100 million question. I think that it did an amazing job. It's probably the best adaptation of a video game ever, because it's so close to it and it keeps that heart and soul. I think that it really struggled in season 2 with some of the creative decisions that they made to not sort of branch off from the video game. And I think that they sort of have to deal with some significant story debt from that standpoint. There's just certain things that Ellie does in season 2, and again, spoiler alert, where you're you would just not do that. Emotionally, the characters just would not go do that. But in a video game, you have to run into the warehouse with all the bad guys and kill them all, because that's what the story tells you, because it's a video game. Whereas the characters just wouldn't do that at that, in my opinion. I don't know, Ashley, what you think.
I did not play the video games. I don't have a lot of context on the video game, but I think there's certainly some logical choices that Ellie made that you're what? It's just like any scary movie that you watch. You're like, don't go in that room. Don't that thing. You know what's going to happen. So there's definitely some of those choices that were made.
Yeah. And so I think that that's ultimately like if you're like really critiquing it. But I think the biggest critique by far, which we can get into later, you know, is like the whole, you know, second game is about, you know, Joel being gone and her response to that. And so, yeah, again, it makes for a great twist, but does it make for a great show after that? And, you know, we'll see. But it's the second time that Pedro Pascal has been brutally murdered on our TV screens. And so, yeah, he's making a habit of it. So, yeah, I just think that, like adaptations, it's just really cool when you can serve the fans. But I think you just, no matter what, you have to serve the story. And so I think probably they got a little too close to it. But, you know, I mean, actually, I think it's more what you like. I was served as the fan, and all the Easter eggs are all really fun. But I mean, ultimately, like how you're not even a sci-fi fan or dystopian television fan, and yet, you know, you found yourself watching.
Why are you so important?
Somewhere out west, they're working on a cure. I think what really impressed them was the fact that I didn't turn into a monster.
Yeah. I hate to even admit that I did not know it was a video game until I think season 2. I didn't even realize, because I've never played video games other than maybe Mario Kart when I was 7, or, you know, like not a lot of video games. And so I just watched this as a viewer of a show. And so I think I probably have a very different perspective, knowing I didn't have any spoilers, any little things I was looking for. I was just watching a show. And so the fact that I quickly fell in love with something that is so out of character for me, and that I was drawn into a TV show that is really counterintuitive to what I normally like, is the draw, and why I'm even here talking about it. It's surprising even just thinking that this is what I chose to speak about, because it's not in my normal wheelhouse. But the character development of this show and the emotions that it pulled was just really good storytelling, really good character development.
That's why we wanted to talk about it so much with you too, is because you were an outsider, not only to this industry, but also to, you know, this industry, meaning like the video game industry, and then also not a consumer of this type of content. And yet it broke through. And like, that's what it did across the world, right? Like, this was just such a breakout hit show for those reasons. What was it that was so remarkable for you in I guess, starting with season 1, episode 1, you know, going back?
I think it was the dynamic in that character between Ellie and Joel was really special. I think this mix between the two of them, it plays a lot with human emotion. You know, both of them make decisions along the way, and from episode 1, but even through, where they make decisions where I feel like struggle emotionally with, is that the ethically, morally right decision? You know, there was I'm thinking towards the end of season 1 where Joel ends up killing the doctor and everybody in the hospital. And you're like, man, you could go both ways with that, where, you know, it seems really morally and ethically wrong for him to go and do, but then also the reason he did it was noble, and really, you understand the human element of, he loves Ellie so much, he wanted to protect Ellie. And so it's just, I feel like there was so much of this push and pull on the emotional human connection. The connection between Joel and Ellie was really important. I thought it was really interesting that you don't even, I feel like, sometimes notice the underlying story and narrative, that there are these creatures that are coming after you. I don't even know, you call them, but these the infected, you know, I almost forget about them. You just sometimes hear the groaning and cries of these characters in the background, but it feels like the story's not about that. The story is actually about the human element and the emotional connection between these characters. And I thought that was really special.
I mean, the two performances of the leads are so good, and it's like just off the charts. But I think that like you have this propulsive underlying mystery that you want to know what's going to happen, right? At like the first episode, it's like, okay, they set it all up like table stakes. There's this crazy virus. It infects bugs. It moved to humans. catastrophic. You see all that stuff and you're like, all right, that's good enough. Like that was all I needed, right? I didn't need like anything more than that. Like that was a good enough setup for me. And it's like, okay, now these things sort of go everywhere and they've taken over and you sort of just suspend belief. You're like, I'm in a story. And then you get this, the moment where you find out that, okay, she's the only person who is known to have actually survived after getting bit. And he has to go take her to this place. So you have this mystery of like, what is going to happen to her, right? Like she is quote unquote the cure, right? So what is going to happen to her? And so you have that sort of like a story that's so clear, right? They need to get from A to B. It is literally a road trip, right? That's like, it just happens to be through a bunch of different areas where there's lots of people that are trying to kill or capture them, right? But it's a road trip. And it's the like, whatever, old lone wolf and the found cub narrative, right? It's like a tale as old as time, like True Grit or whatever it is. The grizzled person who has to take the other person under their wing and act like a father figure, right? Yeah. So then you have this like, this B story, which is, he had a daughter. He sort of like is rejecting her. We don't know her past of whether she had parents or whatever. And so you're just sort of like, it's kind of the will they or won't they, but from like a, learning to coexist standpoint where it's like, are they going to like come together in a way that, is he going to try to be a father to her or not? Is she going to try to like be a daughter? Like, is she looking for a father? Like, is that even what they're both looking for? Because she kind of feels like they are or they aren't. And so that's like that B story. And so you just have this really, really nice first season where like both of those things are hurtling towards this era with this moment in time, it's coming where he's going to have to give her up or not. And like, it's coming. And once that happens and he doesn't do it and he commits like basically an atrocity to save her, which again, I think has some like pretty shaky storytelling, right? Where you're like, there's all sorts of questions, which is kind of fun for you as the audience. And so, and then you get to that point and then we see them in the first 2 episodes of season 2 and like, we forgive him immediately. It's not meant to be that way. Like they wrote it to be, he made the wrong choice, that he made the thing that someone evil would do. Like, it's not meant to be like, but you see Pedro, and you're like, dude, we would all done it, right?
I forgive him immediately.
Oh, not even a question.
He's in season 2, like the whole setup of season 2. I immediately disliked Abby. I mean, immediately. Yep. You hate her as a character. That's why that scene when he died was so impactful, because you hated her. You didn't feel any type of empathy for her, even though what he did was so morally wrong.
Yeah. And I think that part of the reason is you just do this justification in your head where you just say, is it really the only way that you could figure out was to kill? You're going to kill the one person in the world with the cure. You're positive, like you're positive this is the only way to do it, like you're sure. So I think that there's just like a little bit of suspended belief there where you're like, you're just trying to get revenge because your dad died, but you forgot about the whole mission of why you're doing this to begin with. So like that didn't really make sense. And so I think that that's to me where the story starts to have some cracks. And we'll get to marketing stuff here in a second, which is Abby's revenge makes sense to a certain point, but she forgot the mission of why she's doing what she's doing. So that sort of feels a little wonky. And then the same thing happens for Bella Ramsey's character, where you go, well, the whole thing Joel is trying to tell you is like, forget about all this other stuff and like, don't get revenge. And there's just a moment in the season where after he's died and everything, and like, she's like, her girlfriend is pregnant and she has this other life that she can go live. And she still goes to the end of the thing. And you're like, she just wouldn't do that. So like, and the reason why is like, I think because you've taken the reason why you said you liked the show at the beginning was these 2 people. You took the one thing that made this show completely different from anything on TV and you ripped it apart. And it's like, they just shouldn't have done it. It's their right as creators. But like, if you wanted to keep that thing intact, which they did not, like, that's what made it so popular.
I think that's the thing, especially for me, somebody that did not watch or didn't know the video game, didn't have any context. Like you and I had talked right after the episode where Joel got killed by Abby. And I did not see that coming because he was such a staple to the show. And for me, I feel like he was the main character. He was the emotional connection to I just think he was the pull. And so when that scene that he got murdered, which was in itself, I say well done and very well acted and was incredible, but also heartbreaking to watch. It was ever since then, I feel like it's almost difficult because now you have to reacclimate and recalibrate to something different. The show is no longer what made it the thing that someone like me loved about it. And now it's a new thing. And now it's a story about two different characters, or Abby and a different character that I had no context to before. So now it just kind of changes the dynamic, which is interesting. I think there's a fine line, I'm sure, of staying really close to the video game. I don't know if there's a right decision, because if they decided to deviate from the game and keep Joel in some capacity, I'm sure the base of those that loved video game would have been really angry. Because it's not, I mean, how often, every time Disney remakes something and it deviates in any way where it adds a net new song or something creatively changes, people lose it because the original fan base is so tied to the original. So I think it's a lose-lose, but it's definitely an interesting element with Joel gone.
But isn't that like the part that's so fascinating about this is this is why I think that this show, and it's not over, right? They're going to do season 3, and season 3 could completely change our mind about all of this, right? Which we reserve judgment to say that, we were right or wrong in this episode. But I think that's what's so interesting you just said there is that it's a lose-lose. And that's what it feels like. Even though season 1 is 10 out of 10 Pantheon level season of a show. Literally perfect, pitch perfect, right? And then now season 2, you're I ordered the meal and it was fantastic. And I ordered dessert and dessert was terrible. And now I don't know if I want to go back to the restaurant, even though you just had the best steak of your life. Right. And it's that's weird that it became a lose-lose when I think that there's a way to delay that moment to later on in the series to give. And if you're hey, there wasn't enough time or story, or you're just going to tap dance or whatever, we just needed more time with him. And Game of Thrones is one of my favorite shows where both these actors come from. They do this a ton in Game of Thrones where they kill your favorite characters, but that is the world, right? You know what I mean? It's an ensemble of all these different characters. This show was just 2 people. That's the only thing that you care about is these 2 people.
What am I even eating?
That is 20-year-old Chip Boyardee ravioli.
That guy's good.
I actually agree.
So it's just tough to get rid of one of the pillars and expect people to come back.
Especially Pedro, I know. He's just such a good character. I'm not going to say a good guy because he definitely did some really questionable things of the show, but he's such an incredible actor. He's really fun to watch. You believe him 100%. So,
but I think that's what you're saying though. I think is part of this, which is it has crossed the fourth wall to us as fans love Pedro, and we see him in the character, and now he's not going to be on our TVs. It's not that the character is gone. It's that he is not involved in the show anymore. And we get the one episode last season where he comes back because it's flashback and you're oh my gosh. And then in that moment you go, this is the best show on TV when they're together. And then they take it back away from you. And so it just leaves you, it's just a weird feeling as a fan where you go, well, I mean, even just sitting back after it's been a couple months when we're sitting here and we're I just don't feel anywhere near the passion for the show that I once did. And I just it's just is what it is.
I agree completely. I mean, that's how I felt when we first talked about this. I was so excited. I mean, I was just in shock when Joel died. And then the series continued and I slowly I hate to say got a little less interested because that thing that held it together for me was no longer there. And it was harder for me to get this emotional connection to the 2 other characters because they were it was a new introduction and I was still mourning where is Joel?
Yeah.
So
it feels unbalanced. And I think that I think Abby, as currently constructed, has no redeeming qualities. And there's a way to turn all that stuff around. But Jaime Lannister is probably one of the greatest characters in fiction history. And he pushes a child out of a window in the throes of incest in the first episode. And by the end of the series, he's your favorite character. Mm-hmm. So it's there are arcs that can bring Abby back into the fold. There's all sorts of things that they could do. I have no doubt. But in the current climate of the way that we consume things right now, right or wrong, boy, it's going to be a long time to wait 2 years for the next season. And I'm less interested in seeing what they do in season 3 than I was. And I'm super invested in it. But I'm less interested. And just yeah, that's just the biggest takeaway. It's how does that happen?
Yeah. It very much circles back to the whole thing that got us here, which is what pulled us in, and the emotional connection, the storytelling, the human connectiveness between the two characters, and that feeling like that got disconnected. Hey, maybe there's a way they can bring that back. But I think they broke the thing that made people that were outside of the video game really interested.
Okay, let's talk marketing takeaways from The Last of Us. Ashley, what do you got for us?
I spent some time thinking about this, and what I came up to is I mentioned to you that we're going through a pretty big rebrand internally within VelocityEHS, and we can talk about that. I won't spend time advertising that work right now. But what is really important in that is one of the lessons that came out of The Last of Us, but also that's come out of this brand work, is putting the story before the product. And so not having, The Last of Us, not having it focus just solely on the video game or having it focus on this world that they were creating. It was the story between Joel and Ellie and the character development that they did. This story was really about people and relationships and emotion. And I think the marketing lesson there is lead with a human-centric storytelling. Don't sell features. Don't sell the product that you're doing. Really focus on telling a beautiful story about the product that people will benefit from. So the product is enabler. It's not the hero. And that's something that really came true in the research that we did. And I think it's, put the story before the product.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that just the more human and the origin stories and all that stuff that you can dig into, the better, right? It's the Abby example, right? It's we don't know her origin story. We're getting it next season, right? We know that because that's how they ended the first season. Because we don't know her and we don't know her father and we don't know all that stuff. We don't care about her. We just don't. All we've seen her do is bad stuff or selfish stuff, right? Everyone in the show is doing selfish stuff, right? But we don't like her and we do like other people. And it's because we don't understand her, right? So it's if you don't start with a place that is understandable, what happened to her is horrible, right? And they just did, and again, not that it's their right or wrong, but they just did a very heavy-handed job of making us try to care about her. And we just don't. And they're going to try to rectify that next season. But if you don't start, if your human-centric story is so thinly veiled as an attempt to get someone to just buy your stuff, you know what I mean? Then it's not gonna, it's almost like they're in the show, they're saying, oh, you should like Abby. You should feel bad for her. And you're yeah, but I don't feel bad for her.
Yeah. So, I don't have the context to the why. Yeah. I think software companies specifically, but I think a lot of companies, they do this all the time where they sit there and they talk about, I see this all the time right now with the launch of AI, and everyone is talking about AI. Everybody's talking about their features and functionality around AI. And it's why should I care about? What does that mean? What is the connection to why I care about these features? And almost every organization I've ever been at, the company marketing and a lot of the marketing language will lead with features and functionality and not any connection back to why me as a consumer should care about the fact that you just spent 2 years building this AI functionality that you're really excited about, other than to say, we're really excited about the development. And I think making sure you lead with what the actual benefit and value to the individual is really important. And so then that is absolutely what we are doing now is flipping that on our head, because we've done that internally within VelocityEHS. We focus a lot on being excited about the products and the cutting edge this and the cutting edge that. And we lost sight of the fact that what we're actually doing for the benefit is making sure that people get home safe from their job every single day, making sure that when you go to work, you shouldn't worry about losing a finger or worrying about something happening at work. And how does our product help you get to better outcomes? And so connecting the story on why people should care about our product has been a huge shift in the way we're thinking about the brand.
Other marketing takeaways. I have one. Okay, your story depends on your medium. That when you're telling a video game story, you need to do it in a certain way. When you're telling a TV show story, you need to do it in a certain way. And your genre, a lot of times, is not what you think it is. And the way that people are consuming it is just as important as the story itself. And why you liked this genre, well, this show, is not because of the genre. It's because the genre was these two people building a relationship together in this like crazy, world, and how much you cared about them. And if that's your story, like ripping that apart is gonna break it real bad. And doing the things that you do that you might do in a different type of storytelling medium is not going to help with that. So like, for example, if you're making a long form podcast, and then you cut it down to a short video and you publish that as just like a clip, which, we've done that thousands of times at Caspian Studios. And like what we've seen from that is like pulling an out of context clip and just dropping it in of a longer conversation is not going to work. Like you need to like meet the audience in the mode that they're in right that second. And if they're scrolling on LinkedIn or TikTok or whatever, they want that message in a totally different way. And I think just most people just try to like use the source material, take something that's interesting, drag and drop it in. But if you take an idea that Ashley says in minute 50 of a podcast and drop it onto LinkedIn, and the person has no context at all who this person is or what they do or how they got to these insights, then the actual insight itself isn't as interesting or valuable, right? It's like if you knew, like, I've worked at 40 startups and I've done all this crazy stuff or whatever. And then what I started doing is sending personalized handwritten letters via mail. Like, and if all you've learned was the last part is like, oh, this is just a person who sends handwritten letters. That's not interesting at all. It's like, oh no, because everything that they did prior to that was all digital or whatever the example is. And so I think that people just obsess about, finding this good clip or finding this good story and forget about the medium.
I think that's a really good point. I think the medium and the context at when and how they receive the content is really important. I think in the world of B2C software, we often forget about the Meta or Facebook, maybe even in context of my own self of like, I'm not on Facebook anymore, but we're thinking all the time about different channels and thinking, do we want to potentially go back and test Facebook as a channel? And then we can't just serve our standard ads on Facebook, because the context of what people are thinking and the mindset they're on when they're scrolling Facebook, if you give them an ad that's going to be about buying EHS software, most likely the time of day and what they're doing is not going to be relevant. So thinking of the medium and thinking of the content we're serving within that medium, and the context is super important. And we have found that our actual persona is spending a ton of time on Facebook, but we know we can't just go and serve. We can't copy and paste. We do a ton of webinars, a ton of content. We can't just repurpose and serve that on Facebook, because that is not going to be relevant to the people at the time that they're searching. I think that's the point.
Yeah, I totally agree. I have another takeaway for you. You might be wrong about who your audience is. And in The Last of Us, I think you could easily say, okay, who is the audience for The Last of Us? Well, it's anyone who played the video game, or it's anyone who watched The Walking Dead. It's like, that's who our target audience is. And if you did that, you'd be completely wrong. Because there's so many people outside of that watch this show. And I know you have an example in your industry where everybody thinks that, oh, you work in safety, that these are the most buttoned up people, that they, they don't, they do only very safe, non-risky things outside of work. And I know that you found something that's actually the opposite.
I think that's a really good point. The challenge with that, I think if I was part of the marketing group for The Last of Us, I was thinking about that. It's really hard to predict that because you're looking and you're using all the most predictable data you can to understand who is your market audience. And I think all of the data, if they did a bunch of, I'm sure, testing, it would tell them that is their audience, exactly what you said. But it's interesting to see when you actually put it out into the ecosystem, the audience that you thought might not be the right, that might not be the audience that's actually engaging. So I think that's, a really good point. Even if it's you think you understand your audience, you may not. And for us, it was making sure that we're constantly doing market analysis and market research to get in front of these people and actually try to understand them. So we had a lot of assumptions around our personas that we had wrong. And we did not know until we actually went out and surveyed and interviewed and started talking to people to be like, wow, we really, really got the narrative wrong. They're not risk adverse. They are out there, climbing boulders and rock climbing and doing all kinds of things that I would consider pretty risky. And it's changed the way we've really thought about our actual persona.
Yeah, it's like someone who works in risk is actually the best person at adjusting that, right? So the things that like they're calibrating risk profiles because that's their job. Whereas like us, where we're like, oh, it's risky to, go whatever, hang gliding. But the person who works in risk is like, oh, actually, no, I know that's not actually risky. What's risky is like, biking down the street without a helmet on or whatever it is, it's like they actually understand the full gamut of what understanding risk is, whereas like we don't. So they go and do, all the things that anyone does to have fun or blow off steam or hobbies or whatever. I just thought that was such an interesting, thing that, and we hear this all the time. It's like, oh, this is a boring industry, or this is for accountants or IT or whatever, or HR. This is boring. Like when we did murder in HR, everyone was like, oh, it's murder mystery set in HR. Like, do HR people, they don't like that. And we're like, what are you talking about? Like our data shows us the exact opposite of what you're saying. That HR people, that the crossover between people who listen to true crime and HR is actually extremely positive, and that there's a high correlation there. So you're just making something up, and we're like trying to dig in on that. And you still have to test the assumption and see if it's true.
Another takeaway, and then this is, I think, an obvious one, but The Last of Us did a really good job of building an ecosystem or a universe of multiple products that amplified their exposure. So there's a video game, there's the TV, there's the series that we are all talking about here. And so thinking about marketing and thinking about multiple different, creating an ecosystem within your own world, whether it's having a podcast, having a weekly coffee meeting that you're pulling together EHS professionals to talk about what's most important, having a really strong thought leadership program, virtual event program, live, like just having multiple mediums, multiple ways for people to learn about you, find out about you, hear from you, and not just kind of sticking in one content universe. I think The Last of Us obviously has multiple different ways that people are learning, understanding, and can connect with the brand. And that, so I mean, for us, I mean, you have a podcast here. I think about that for us, and how do we connect more directly? How do we build an emotional connection to our audience that's not just the typical come to my website, download a white paper? It's how do we actually drive value to you and connect with you in a meaningful way, whether it's, like I said, a weekly thought leadership, just open forum discussion where we can just discuss what's happening, AI and EHS, and how we can help provide value to you in that way. But the idea of creating an ecosystem of content.
I love that. I have another one, which is star power matters. Like, Bella and the HBO is notorious for this, right? This is why they reuse stars from one show to another. Like one, of course, they like working with an actor. You're going to want to work with them again. But it's not just that. It's that people are familiar with that stuff. Like, oh, wait, he's Littlefinger, but he was in The Wire. Or like, oh, Pedro Pascal, like he was in Game of Thrones. Like, so I think that it's just stars are still super important. They're always going to be important. I don't know who a star is in your industry, but you should figure that out. And like when you take a star and put them in something new, it turns heads. And like that always works. Like it always, because the whole point is we just got to stop the scroll, right? We got to just like get people to pick up their heads and notice something. So like, oh, that person's the new CMO there. Or like, wait, that person joined your company, or, oh, you're making a podcast with them, or, oh, they're speaking at this event, or, oh, they're doing a private dinner. Like those are the things that like star power just matters in any industry that you're in. And if you can figure out who the stars are, you should try to figure out a way to work with them.
Yeah. I mean, this is the whole market of influencer marketing and why that's so valuable. Why influencers are so valuable is that idea of star power or influence, the realm of influence. I think that's a really good point. I'm always trying to look at that as like, who are in EHS, it's who are the loudest voices in our category? Who are those that grab the most attention or have the most followers? And how do we engage with them in a way that builds credibility and trust with our brand by just even having the connection back to those stars of the category?
Ashley, anything else? What else we got?
A couple other things I had thought of is embracing emotional tension, or just the emotional aspect in general. This TV show obviously teetered a lot of different uncomfortable emotions. And really, there were a lot of gray areas morally with these characters. I think often in marketing, we get scared of emotion. We get scared of emotion-driven actions. We try to stay very neutral in our language. We don't want to be provocative. We don't want to be bold. And I think we as humans crave that. I think this show is a perfect example of that. Like the boldness, the emotional connection, the confliction of the characters was really valuable. So the marketing lesson is not to be afraid of being bold and leveraging emotion. Like in our industry, there are truly connections to saving lives and people not dying at work. And there is an emotional connection there. And there are stories that we could highlight, characters and real people that had experiences, a loved one that had gotten impacted by an injury on site, etc. Like there's so much raw emotion and connection of the stories that could be told, and not being afraid of telling an uncomfortable story of somebody that got hurt on a job in a meaningful way, and the backlash of what could happen there. So yeah, I think there's something really valuable in the idea of embracing emotional tension and the uncomfortableness that comes with some of the stories of the emotion. The last one that I had written down was create characters that people care about. And Joel and Ellie were characters that we really cared about and had connection to. This is tied back to that idea of embracing emotional tension, but building relatable personas and customers as heroes in your content and people that you can recognize yourself in, whether it's in the messaging, but being able to have the relatability to build trust and loyalty. So the idea of, in our marketing messaging, this idea of humanizing characters, whether it's like meet Clara, the EHS professional who works in this industry, who is on the front line of, she's responsible for 200 manufacturing plant managers to make sure there's like building a character and actually creating a persona around a character, which might be in this case, Clara, like really personifying the character and building relatability and connection to these characters within your brand story is really important. The Last of Us, this is the thing that made it, I think, most sticky for me, is their character development and the emotional tie to those characters was really valuable. I think there's ways brands can do this. There's definitely examples of brands that have done this. And I think we could all learn more about actually building that connective relationship to personas.
It is just so important. Building characters is obvious, but doing it in B2B is hard. Like it's not an easy thing. And like, this is what should spend our time on. Like, these are the hard things, right? It's like, I guarantee you that every single decision they made about Joel and Ellie were hard. Like, the things that they had to sit and debate over, do we see exactly how they, make up? Well, how do they make up? What is the scene on the porch? What is the whatever? Like, these are all things that they thought about over and over and over again for hours and hours, I'm sure. And it's like, are we doing that?
Those are all of my takeaways that I had.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, just final thing before we get out of here, Ashley, thanks so much. But I know you're in the middle of going through sort of like a brand overhaul, and that's always a fun, crazy challenge. But just, how you're thinking about that.
A lot of what we touched on today, it's, for VelocityEHS, we are a software company that's building software to help enable safety professionals to have to make the job more safe, for making manufacturing plants more safe. And a lot of the actual output of what our product does is helping people not be hurt on the job, or mitigating risk, future risk, or predicting risk so that others don't get hurt. And there's a lot of emotion to that. And when I first started here, the thing that kept coming up is all these stories of why people are in this profession. The reason that they are EHS professionals is because whether it was a family member got hurt, or there was an emotional connection to every story that I heard. Yet our brand, I feel like, really lacked a lot of the emotional connection and storytelling. It was all about features, functionalities, us talking about how excited we were about our platform and our products. And I kept saying it was lacking heart and feeling. And so this brand work I'm really excited about, because it's bringing the heart back into, I think, so much of what we're focused on, and the connection back to those that really care about the output of this work, this EHS professional career and category. And so I'm really excited. We spent a lot of time, a lot of strategy, a lot of thinking, understanding our personas, our characters, and making sure we get it right, so that when we go out to the market, we are really hitting on leading with emotion, leading with the human-centric mentality, building the right characters and stories, and putting the customer back in the center of our story, and knowing that the product is actually secondary. We're the assistant, we're the accelerator of the outcome, but we are not the one driving the outcome. So I'm really excited to get this stuff back in market, and really proud of the work the team has done.
Ashley, wonderful having you on the show. Thank you so much. For our listeners, you can go to ehs.com to learn more. And, if you know someone in manufacturing, or if you're in it yourself, go check out VelocityEHS. Anything, any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
I think that's it. I'm excited for people to come and check out our category. We're in a little bit of a niche category. So come check out EHS, even if it is just to see our new brand. Would love to have people stop by the site. And thank you so much for having me on the show, Ian. It's been really fun to revisit The Last of Us. I am excited I'm excited, and will be waiting for season 3 of The Last of Us.
Indeed. Me too. Aren't we all? Thanks so much. And talk soon. Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.